started. Aly, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maria. And thanks everyone for joining. First, I'm not usually looking this side. So please, if I'm looking the other way, it's just looking to other screen. So it's not ignoring or something. I'll start by sharing the slides and I'll go over a quick intro, and then we'll go together, see the demo, see the tools that we're speaking about, and I'd like to make it interactive. So probably from one stop to the other, feel free to ask some questions. And Maria, please help me with that. I don't see the questions live, so she will help me with that.
Of course.
Okay, so first, let's go for a quick intro. My name is Aly Ibrahim. I'm a technology strategist. I work as a solution architect at AWS currently. I worked before for Red Hat, for Ericsson, and Oracle. I have a bachelor in computer engineering and a master's in machine learning. My current domain of work is Kubernetes automation, which is now very big list, which is like DevOps, GitOps, CI/CD, platform engineering as well is part of that. I like also to work with streaming and analytics and serverless architectures. And I don't like to put cloud because like most of things are now currently running on cloud. So cloud, of course, is one of my domain interests. I'm currently living in Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from Egypt. I have a dog and a daughter, like 2 kids. My dog is named Bond, and Hannah is my daughter. She's 4, he's 6. I'm trying to be more active in the community, so you will find me in the Slack channel. I created the Dallas Platform Engineering Group. I'm already one of the co-organizers for the Kubernetes meetup in North Dallas. And if I'm not working, I like to watch movies, I like photography. So this is a little bit about me. And we'll go start by why we're speaking about Kubernetes today. Why do you need to be productive with Kubernetes? So first, what Kubernetes is. So Kubernetes is an open source system for orchestrating your container applications. So it helps you with deployment, with scaling, with management of containers. It's been here open sourced by Google in 2014, so little shy than 9 years old. It's a production grade, so people are using Kubernetes now in production. It's running a lot of workload running in Kubernetes, whether banking, multiple industries like banking, media, machine learning. I think also I've read recently that ChatGPT is using Kubernetes to scale, so it's very helpful with scaling your applications. And you can think of Kubernetes as an abstraction layer, so it abstracts all the infrastructure and all the operating system behind it. So you just deal and interact with Kubernetes, but underneath that there is a lot of networking happening. There's a lot of security, a lot of operating system, a lot of things that probably you don't need to do it yourself. It's better to understand because it affects you. But with just one command or a couple of commands, it totally masks all these things and work directly. And moving forward, you will start seeing Kubernetes as part of platforms. So it's even more abstracted to even what's happening behind that. And the good piece of it, it's declarative. So you can just define what you want, put it in YAML files, and apply those YAML files, and it's Kubernetes' job to make sure that what you have asked for is already working. So for example, if you're asking for a number of replicas for 2 replicas, just mention 2, and it's the controller job to keep checking that it's 2, and if one of them died, it will create another one. And if you scale that to 3, it makes sure that, so it's declarative. You just need to write what you want, and the controller will make sure to fulfill your dreams. And that's why it's a very powerful controller. So we've started seeing Kubernetes now not just as an orchestrator for your containerized applications, but people are using Kubernetes to even orchestrate some other thing that's outside of Kubernetes. So for example, interact with maybe OIDC systems, create cloud services on the cloud from Kubernetes. So there is, for example, on Amazon, there is the ACK, which is the controllers for AWS controllers for Kubernetes. You can just declare your services that you want to do. For example, you want to create a Route 53, just submit this YAML file, it will create it for you. Of course, if you give it the correct roles. Also keep managing, and if you want to change something, you can just change from the YAML. So the controller itself is very powerful, that it can even manage beyond containers, and it's extensible. Like I mentioned, this ACK. A lot of projects that comes on top of Kubernetes that just extend the regular resources. So instead of just deployment, services, all these basic things, ingress services, they start adding more. So for example, something like Argo CD add applications as resources. ACK, which is that controller that I mentioned, will add the kind for Route 63, a kind for RDS instance, a kind for, and there is something also in Azure service, it's called service controllers, which can do the same. And cross-plane, for example, which can give you kind of similar to Terraform way of managing your infrastructure, but with using YAML files, and it allows the controller to extend and create all these things. So it's very extensible. You can even extend it for your own application. Okay. Recently, it's now about a year. So CNCF generated the annual survey. It's 2021, but it was published in February 2022. And the survey checks a lot of things, how many users they survey, a lot of companies, a lot of users, a lot of developers, and see what's the adoption happening. And they found that Kubernetes has crossed the adoption chasm. And which means that now Kubernetes is a mainstream technology, or started to be mainstream. And if you're not very familiar with CNCF adoption, or in general adoption of any new technologies, there is always the innovators in the beginning. They are the first ones who just create things and try to do it. And there are the early adopters, which are probably some people like the solution architects or someone like that, who are curious about technology and want to test something out. They go and check it out and try to test it and play with it. And even some companies who will go and play with it for some time until it mature a little bit. And from that time, you will start seeing vendors who will come and adopt that technology and start even put it as a mainstream. And that's what's happening now. So we're starting to see Kubernetes being adopted by multiple companies. A lot of vendors are now using Kubernetes and productizing it. And further on with platform engineering, we will start seeing Kubernetes come underneath. So you will not be, sometimes you will not be even interacting directly with Kubernetes as a user or as a developer, but all the platform itself is running and Kubernetes is underneath that. And in the survey also is showing that we have 96% of organizations are either using or evaluating Kubernetes. So if you're looking for a job, that's a very, very good place to be. Most of the companies are either working or using it. And if you're a developer or even a sysadmin and you want to use Kubernetes better, I think it's a good time to increase the way that you're interacting with it. And it's open source, so you will work with it wherever it is, even if your company is running their workload on Azure, on AWS, on Google, even on-prem, it's the same thing. So it's very valuable, and it's started to be part of a lot of platforms, and having the understanding of it is very valuable for the coming years. With all that, there are still some challenges. So Kubernetes is not an easy thing to understand. Mentioned, especially now with the increase of the landscape in application that CNCF is providing. So it's now very big. It's not something that you can just get it in one day. And you need, especially if you're coming sometimes from a development background, just to wrap your head around that, it's a little difficult. So part of the challenge is the learning curve. It's a steep learning curve. It's not easy. Probably just to understand, you start learning about deployment and services, and then you figure out someone speaking about something called ingress, and and it takes time. And a lot of CRDs I mentioned is very extensible. So a lot of CRDs and a lot of projects that come and interact with Kubernetes, that makes it sometimes difficult. So the learning curve itself is not easy. And then managing that, especially if you're working for a company that's using Kubernetes, they're not just using one cluster, they're using multiple clusters. And to be able to manage your work across all these clusters, and for the company itself to be able to, and the operation teams to be able to manage those clusters, that's one of the challenges, and it gets bigger and bigger by time. And of course, the monitoring and observability, and I'll add to that security as well. So how can I see what's happening? How can I understand what's happening? If there is an issue happening in my cluster, how can I know that, and how can I interact with that? Probably will not cover all these things today, but I kind of come with some tools that some of them I've been using in the beginning that was very helpful for me to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And others, maybe I don't use them that much now, but they were very helpful in the beginning, and some other tools that I keep using till the current time. So with that, I think I'll go for the demo directly instead of me speaking about them, and then we'll go back and summarize. So let me switch to my terminal and just quickly make sure that I'm logged in. Yeah, so just a second. Okay, so we'll start from the beginning. So one of the major things that if you're working with multiple Kubernetes clusters is how can I switch between one cluster and the other? Usually working with maybe a prod cluster, a test cluster, and the dev cluster. Or you're having your own local cluster and the company cluster, and you want to switch with that. There is a complicated command for that to switch the context. So Kubernetes, when it's first deployed, it install kubeconfig for you, which has the context how to interact with Kubernetes. And by time those contexts get large, and to move, you need to understand to know the command. And they come up with very easy tools to do that for you. So the first one is kubectx, which is contexts, and you can give it the context for the name of the cluster that you're working for example, the workshop one. You can see that I switched. Another way, if you combine that with auto-completion, and you can do that, it can list you all the clusters that you're working with. So it's just a few steps. You can switch between one cluster. The command itself is you need to use the set context and define the context name. And I don't really remember that anymore. Or you can use if you're working with cloud providers, you need to just update the kubeconfig again from the cloud provider command line, which is very cumbersome. But kubectx makes it easy, even interactive for you to switch between your clusters and deal with them. In a very similar way, Kubernetes comes in the namespace context. So everything runs in the namespace. So if you do kubectl get namespace, you can see, for example, that here I have 5 namespaces. And usually if I'm deploying something, or let's say get pods, getting pods if I do that, it's already defined for the default namespace, so nothing. So I need to identify kube system to identify that I'm looking in this namespace. And if you're running in a cluster, multiple namespaces, so every time you need to -n kube and define your namespace. Another way to do that is, again, play with the context, go to the config file, change it, or use the cumbersome set context and define that. So very similar to kubectx, there is another tool called kubens, which can do the same also. Look forward, switch it. So now if I'm running the same command without ns, so it is already looking into my kube system. So it makes it easier, especially if you're just dealing more with one of your namespaces. So you don't need makes your commands shorter and makes you switch between the namespaces much easier and give you visibility as well. So those are like kind of first intro things to deal with it. The other thing is, where can we see those tools, or can we get those tools? So there is something called crew. So if you kubectl crew list. So crew is a plugin manager. It's like on Linux, DNF, or brew on Mac, or chocolatery on Windows. And crew will give you a list of all. Let's do crew kubectl crew. So what we can do here, oops, okay. So you can see what plugins that you installed, or you can get info for all things, or you can discover new plugins. So you can do kubectl crew search, for example. So see, all these tools are provided as plugins for your kubectl. Some of them are very helpful, some of them not that much. But you can even do info and see what plugin is, what this plugin is doing. We will use some of those tools already today. But it's a very, very good starting point if you're looking for, okay, what can I do? How can I do it? So for example, Stern will work with it today, which can give you visibility to multiple logs. They keep updating it. So from time to time, you just need to do upgrade or update your crew to see all the new plugins. And some of the plugins are also used to just shorten your flight. So there is, I think, something to do shell into the pods, which is kind of a long command. Yeah, pod shell here. Pod logs. Some of them will be repeated. So just check it, check what you want to do with it. But it's a very good starting point to see what you can do and how we can be more productive. One of the great tools I like here is the resource capacity. And that will move us to part of the management of the cluster. But before moving forward, so Maria, are there any questions so far?
There were just either going to be a slide listing the 7 tools, and I think you answered that question with having this type of plugin, right? But maybe we'll also include it in the follow-up. There is a slide for that. And no, other than that, no.
Okay, good. So we can continue. We'll continue with resource capacity. And let's say you have a cluster and you're managing it and you don't know how much capacity you have available. So probably the best or the productive way of doing that is to use something like Prometheus. And Prometheus will be interacted with Grafana, which is a dashboard, and it will give you some kind of view. But an easier way and faster way to do it is to use this kind of plugin. I already installed it, but we can go ahead and uninstall it and install it again just to show you. Crew uninstalled resource capacity. Yeah, so the plugin is uninstalled. Let's just install it again. So now it's installed, and you can say to use it, you just use kubectl capacity, and we'll do that right now. And let's just kubectl resource capacity. Run that. The default is checking the nodes, and it will pull metrics from the requests and limits. So how many requests and limits did you add on your pods? So it will check that and tell you, okay, you're currently, this is a very small cluster, but currently those 2 nodes are, one of them is used like 66% and the other one is used 16% from the CPU perspective versus the memory perspective. This is not the current utilization, but this is the utilization that you defined as requests and limits. To see the current one, we can do util. And this will show us that Yes, we have requesting 11, but currently we're just using 1%. It's very idle cluster. Just installed it before that. So the utilization is very low. You can even, with just one command, you will be able to see what is the status of my cluster, what's happening, what's the utilization, and how do I need to upgrade, add new node, or just do I need to modify the current requests and limits for my CPU? Another way to do it is to maybe sort it. Also, give you that. Sort by CPU. CPU.util. And in this case, like all of them are 1%, but you can do it in memory util. So it's now sorted by, this is the 8% is higher versus the previous one. So it can show you also that this node maybe need to be increased or make it bigger versus the other one. Of course, this is a small cluster, so it's not helping that much, but that's how we can give you like complete visibility. This, especially the utilization piece, would need metrics to be installed on the cluster. You can also check that within a specific namespace. So we can do this for, let's see which namespace we can do it. Let's do that and do and we can also do it with -p to see the pods. So we can see on this node, these are the pods running. On this node, these are the pods running, and all of those are running within the kube system. And it will give you the utilization and the requests for each specific pod running on your system. So it's kind of very good view, at least initial view to your cluster, without going to Grafana and Prometheus and all this hassle. Just need metric server running on your cluster, and it will give you that overview of what's running on. What's next? Yeah. Let's do something.
Ali, we have questions now. Do you want to get
Sure,
started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Somebody says kubectx is dangerous. It updates context in all terminal sessions using the same kubeconfig file. So you may have one terminal and believe you're connecting to dev cluster, but maybe in another session you switch to prod cluster. I guess it's just like a comment from your side.
I didn't get that. So he's saying it's better to keep two terminals on two different clusters?
Yeah, so
sorry, can you repeat it, Maria? Sorry,
I guess you got the first part. So you may have one terminal and believe you're connecting to a dev cluster, but maybe in another session you switch to a prod cluster.
Oh, yeah, you gotta be cautious in general, but that's the same. Like even without kubectx, if you switch the context, you gotta note which cluster you're using. So at least kubectx, if you run it, it will show you which one you're using currently. Without that, you need to go and check the kube config yourself.
Got it. And guys, I just wanted to make a quick note. Questions get lost very easily in a chat. So if you can put them in the Q&A section, that would be better, but I'll continue with those that are in the chat now. So what's the difference between a resource capacity plugin and a kubetal top nodes command?
Kube, what?
kubectl top nodes command.
Okay. No, both are very similar. It's just different way of seeing the same thing. kubetop will also give you some metrics. This will give more, maybe a better breakdown for my view at least. But top should give something very similar as well.
Next question is, are these plugins secure so we can install them without any security problems?
That's a very good question. Most probably you need to make sure most of them are open source. So depending on how do you see secure is, you need to check it on your own way. These are not provided by a vendor or something that you can go after him and check it. This is like just open source products. I would say check with your security team. They will give you access or approval for specific plugins. But the ones that I'm sharing here today are very most common. The community is very active with them. So probably if there is any vulnerability, it will be fixed very soon. But yeah, don't take my word, especially for a production cluster.
Got it. Also, does Crew also supported under JKE?
Under what?
JKE. I think it's
JKE. Right. Okay. Yeah. So Crew doesn't really care where are you running your cluster. It mostly care about your operating system, if it's Linux, Windows, or Mac. And the way that you can see the plugins, it's already filtered by your operating system. So they understand your operating system, and they will filter it based on that. For example, if you run the same command on a Windows machine, probably you'll see something different versus that. But yeah, it can work for GKE, EKS, AKS, local clusters, whatever.
Which is Google Kubernetes engine, right?
Yeah, GKE. Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
Yeah, Mustafa helped me. I didn't know. Next one. Plugins installed on local or on Kubernetes?
Those are local. The plugins will be installed local.
Yeah, I guess let's move forward to the next section. And I see a lot of comments. It would be good to list all of the 7 tools. So I don't know if you have it somewhere later on the slide, or we will just follow up with this list.
I already written some info about them in the slides. I will summarize later, but I prefer to just go show you directly what are the plugins, and then it's written on the slides as well. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, so the coming tool, I really used it a lot in the beginning. It helped me a lot understand what's happening behind the scenes in Kubernetes. It's called kubespy, and it has 2 modes. One to check the status, and the other one to trace what's happening. I like the tracing better. Status is not that helpful, but I'll show you both ways. So say kubespy. Let's see which context we're in. Yes. And we're still with that workshop. Okay, good. So kubespy and do status. So we're checking the status. For the status, you need to mention the API version and then the kind of things. So we're checking a deployment, and deployment comes with apps/v1. If you don't know what is that, if you check your YAML, that's the first thing, probably API version. And the second one is the kind. So this is deployment. And let's do, for example, let me switch to the other cluster because I have more stuff to show you. So let's go with this one. Then apps/v1 or, and this is the namespace / the deployment name. Oh, my token is expired. Switch to the other one. Probably I need to deploy something quickly, so I can show you that. Give me a second. Just need to disconnect the sharing a little bit. Just 1 second. Add my login and come back. Maybe while doing that, if there are other questions, just let me know about them.
While Ali is doing that, yeah, coffee time. Adrian, are you guys going to KubeCon Europe in Amsterdam? What's the next big event you're attending? Feel free to drop in the chat. Hey, Mandy is looking at attending with some coworkers. Who else?
Okay, I'm back. Sorry for this technical issues. Okay, can you see my screen back again?
Yes.
Okay, so currently we're just check the status now. So let me just show you what's happening here. And on the below terminal, let's scale it. So cube scale deployment. And then this one is replicas equal to, and let me just give that name. So you can see, like live, you can see what's happening on the status. It shows you that this is something has been changed, removed, and this was added. So it's giving you what's happening in the status of any of your things. This is good, but I really like better the tracing. So tracing not just show you what's happening, but okay. So if we do the same thing with trace, we don't need that, and we can see trace. Okay, so it shows you that now this deployment has been rolled out successfully. It's created a new replica set. The replica set is available, and the replica set has 2 pods, and those are the 2 pods. So it made you understand what's happening behind the scenes, not just showing the status, but also what's happening. So if we replace that again, 1, you can see that it got updated. We can do also something different. So especially when you're debugging something, we can, for example, do we have test here? kubectl is and then let me apply this. Apply myself. So let's just delete that. I'll show you because it's better to see what's happening now. Trace, and instead of this, we do test. Again, test is the namespace. My app is the deployment name. So it's tracing that, and it will show, for example, that, okay, something is wrong. Container is not working, the image is not working. So if we go here and Control B, and Control B, that, and VI deployment, or let's edit that. And yes. can see, for example, that container image has something wrong here. So it's latest. So we forgot the T. Control X. Yes. Save. You see up. So it's changing. And in a little bit, just pulling things. Yes, it pulled, rollout, it's ready. It's very good for your first days with Kubernetes when you want to see what's happening. Probably you don't know, or even if you know, but deployments create replica sets create application pods, and those are all related. That's also very similar to if we do, for example, here. So let's trace, for example, this one, service. So this is showing you that the service has created endpoint, and the endpoint is now looking to this. If we go back here and scale it again to 2, you will see that there is a new endpoint will be created and added, and this is how the load balancing will happen between these two pods. So it's very good just to see what's happening, keep tracing your things, learn about it. Maybe after some time you don't need to do that, you can just check events and see what's happening, but it's very interesting tool to just give you visibility what's happening behind the scenes. I'll be switching to another tool now, which is Stern. Sometimes you want to see the logs of your pods, and there is a command for that, kubectl logs, and you need to give the pod name. But if your application is deployed across multiple pods, so either you have a logging system in production and you log to that logging system, maybe Splunk, maybe whatever, Logstash, whatever logging system your company is using, and looking into that. But for locally, the kubectl logs will give you visibility to one pod. And if your application is like this one, for example, deployed into multiple pods, so you need to check one, make sure the request goes to this one. No, so you need to get out and check it again and check for the other one. So Stern help with that, and it's very and it can help also with visibility. So if we can do, let's go back here and cancel this. We don't need this anymore. Do Stern, and then that pod name, for example, and then UI. So good. It can show you that, okay, this is the pod, and this is the container within the pod. And if I go here and pick this one, just do here, just refresh, accept. So if we go back to the terminal, you can see that the logs are printing from this pod. But let's say that I'm not sure if this is the pod that's serving my application or the other pod. So instead of doing that, you can let it check the logs for all the deployment. And with that, you will see here that we have two, one, the yellow one, which is the yellow pod, and the green pod. And it's getting logs from both of them. So if you go back, refresh, you can see that it's generating, like this one has been, because it's load balancing, so this one is got handled by the first pod, this one is got handled by the second pod. And let's say we're just go Control D here. Let's say we change that. So Stern will understand and show you, okay, it's minus, so this pod is not there anymore. If we scale it back in, it added the new pod again. So you don't need to go exit the kubectl logs and see it again. It's just keep it running, and it will be watching all your pods running within your application. You can even check, I think, pods across all namespaces with some regular expressions. I don't usually do that, or I don't have the need for that, but you it can help. And it can help with daemon sets. Like if you're having, for example, any daemon set that's running across all the nodes, and you want to see all the logs for those all daemon sets, Stern can be also very good help with that. Any question before I move to the next one?
So far, no questions.
Yeah. Okay. K9S. Now we're moving to more complex tools. Instead of just one tool that's doing one thing, we will be looking to tools that consolidate multiple things in one category. And I'll start with K9S. I'll move to the more modern way of doing it. But still, I like K9S. It's a complete way or complete management for Kubernetes clusters on your terminal. So if we do that, so you can see, for example, this is giving complete view. Again, it works with metric server, need to be installed. So it can show me that on my cluster, and this is called pulses. And pulses was showing that I have 28 deployments running on my clusters. I have 45 pods. All of them are green. I don't have red ones. I have those kind of events. Those are the number of replica sets. That's across all my cluster. But I can also do that. And this is like just hit colon and type node, and will show me the node of my nodes running on my cluster. Again, it can give you some visibility on the CPUs and memory percentage and availability and so forth. And we can go, for example, and see namespaces. And those are all the namespaces running here. Let's say go to this one, and you can see the pods. And if we do, for example, L, it will start showing logs here. So if I do refresh, it will start pulling logs. It's not like Stern. Stern is looking, checking logs for multiple things. This is just looking for this specific pod. But this is like a tool that does a lot of things, not just this thing. So if we can go to namespace, for example, and choose the test namespace. Test namespace. So we do that. Let's say we want to edit this YAML file. So instead of kubectl edit, like I was doing in the previous commands, we can just do E, and E will give you the way to edit your pod. So that's from the pod perspective. And similarly, any YAML files. We can do, for example, we check the logs. We can, if you want to do shell into that log, like just log into that. I think shell is yes. Yeah, and now I'm within the log, so within the pod. So I'm inside my pod. You can check that. So everything you're just managing from one space or one place. Another thing you can do here, which is also sometimes very helpful, is checking the secrets. So if we go back to namespaces and we choose that backend, and we do the secret. So we have this secret. We can do X. If you check the secret itself, you can see that the data is encoded. But if we can go back and we can do X, which will decode it, you can see that we can now get the secret values. Another great thing that this tool can do is do something called Popeye, and Popeye is a plugin to K9S. And if we run that, let's just make sure that we're in the same right namespace. We go to the namespace second one and do Popeye. And it takes a little bit of time. It will do inspection to all these pods, yes, and it will show you in this namespace, or in this, I think it's checking for all the cluster now. Yeah, that's checking for all the cluster. So it's showing that you have one warning, out of the 50, you have one warning, 50 services, config maps. So let's say we want to see that, what is the warning on this pod? Enter that, let's show you that this pod is running using the default service account, and we need to change that. And this is my pod, so for the demo. So we need to change that. This is kind of a security warning. You can also add your own rules in that, but it's a very good intro tool. Probably within your organization, you will have a complete list of security checks. This could be one of them. But it can give you some guarantee that at least you're following the best practices. You're not just running your pods with regular things, and you're trying to adhere to the standards as well. If you're not very happy with the command line way of handling these things, so you're probably better fit for OpenLens. And OpenLens is very similar to what K9S can do, but in a UI way. This was an open source project run by Mirantis. They started, it's called Lens, but they started to change the license. So open source take it and fork it and created the OpenLens one. So just watch that, because the license could be differs from one to the other. And you can see, we can go to, let's go to this. Where's the workshop one? My cluster. You can see from here the pods running, filter that by namespace. And similarly on the networking, you can see the services, ingresses if we have. You can even go to namespaces, add a new namespace. It's called test, create it. You can scan all the Helm charts that's running on your cluster. And that's, I know one we can use. So install this one, for example. And you can install the Helm chart from here. You don't need to go do the Helm install, whatever. And we'll install that in the namespace test. Install. It's installing. You can go back to the deployments and the namespaces. Just choose test one. And you can see that this was installed. We just created this namespace, but it created the deployment from the Helm chart. You can even go for the and change your cluster here, add a new one, do port forwarding, see the logs, a lot of other things. How are we doing on time? I have 2 more, but I can't just put them on the slides if we're tight on time.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes, so I would say let's do what people are saying. Please show 2 more.
So I can do them very quickly, the other 2.
Yes,
I'll try my best. So I showed you the Popeye on K9S, which can do checks on the YAML files or on what's running on your cluster. But what if you want to check that before deploying it into your cluster? If you're developing something, developing your Helm chart, developing your YAML files, you want to make sure that you're adhering to those standards. So with that, there is something called kubelinter, and kubelinter also is a tool that can be added to your pipelines, to your if you're using, I don't know, Jenkins or any CI/CD or anything like that. Just add kubelinter with that. You can add your own rules to kubelinter, or by default it has some rules. So we can do kubelinter lint. And I will check my deployment, if my deployment is adhering to the standards, and directly it will show me that, okay, you don't have any CPU requests, you don't have any memory requests, which it's not something that it will break. It will work, but those adhering to the standards, and it is telling you that this is the name of the check we did, and you need how to modify that or how to change that. You need to set your requests and limits for your containers. And you can even follow this link and tell you how to do that. I'm not confirming that this application is running as root. So you need to set run as non-root and put it as true. And this is based on non-zero number, and this is based on this link. So if you don't know best practices very well, this would be very helpful in the beginning to understand, scan your YAML and give you way of handling it. There is a way to see, I think, enter, and I think checks will show you what are the checks. Yeah, checks lists. Yeah, so this is all those things are built in kubelinter. You can enable by default or disable by default. You can add your own rules, and probably your security team, if they want to embed this into in the pipelines, they will need to add their own rules. And some of those rules also will tell you why and what's the remediation, what you can do, and so forth. The other bonus tool, I would say, so let's say we did that kubelinter, we did this. So let's try, we need to fix this, and we don't know how to do it very well. So it's a VS Code plugin, and if you're not very sharp on your YAML things and how to write YAMLs, it's very helpful. So now we can see this deployment. We know from kubelinter that it's missing requests. So if we go here and do this, so it is already autocomplete for my YAML. This is the YAML plugin. It's provided by Red Hat, and it's showing that, okay, I understand that this is a deployment. I'm checking this schema, and this schema is showing that we need requests, and that's CPU, and CPU could be just put at the same thing, memory, and memory. 28 MI. So now I was able to change it. If we go back to the linter and check that, now see, we fixed already those two issues, still have those two issues. Another thing this plugin can do for you is really run most of these things. So if we create any file, let's say service.yaml, and okay, I don't remember what was the main things on service. So if we do service, you can see it's auto-completing. Do you want secret, Kubernetes secret, or Kubernetes service? So say I want a service, so it's already printed out the YAML. And okay, now I just need, oops, instead of adding the whole YAML, which I probably can misspell something or misident something. So it's now ready for me to just add the ports, define my application, and set the target port, and it's ready. If I don't want this, let's say I'm just creating a secret. So this is again showing you that the structure of the YAML file for the secret. Similarly with deployment. Even if you want to do something that's not part of the regular Kubernetes CRDs, there is a way that you can update your schema and add your schemas to this YAML thing, and it will show you. I think we're 5 minutes behind. So with that, I will stop sharing and see if there are any questions or if there are any follow-ups on that.
Yeah, there is just a comment that GitHub Copilot will suggest the whole code snippet, but of course you have to check if it's correct a little bit.
Yeah, we're not competing with Copilot here. So Copilot is great, but at least this one will work. And Copilot also learns from the previous things. So with different versions, the schema changes, and you may be adhering to one version that's very old because it's just learning from the previous ones. So at least this one, you know that which you already identified the schema that you're looking for, so it's looking for the latest one. And it doesn't do any smart things. It just generates template for you.
Yeah, someone is asking, what's the name of the viscose extension?
YAML. The code itself is called YAML, and it's by Red Hat.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of other YAML files.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of Thank you, Ali. Great session. I learned it all. Do you want me
Okay, great.
to
I like that you like it. I know we go beyond 7, but there are also more tools I would like to discuss, but we're limited. But those are like very good in just to the points that we discussed in the beginning, like the learning, the manageability, and observability as well.
Amazing. A lot of people are asking about recording. So recording and slides, we'll share tomorrow in the follow-up email. You can find the recording at the Platform Engineering YouTube channel. Like it's live now. Let me just like share the link, or like it will come tomorrow to your inbox for sure. Yeah, Ali, you want to open the chat? Webinar chat, because there are a lot of uploads. And somebody is asking about part 2, and we actually talked about that yesterday with Ali, right?
Yeah.
You want to give a small teaser?
Yeah, probably part 2. I'm still working. It's still in the works. I'll do on something more on the code and how to enable developers faster, and we're looking also for other things on managing multiple applications across multiple clusters. So we'll keep sending notifications on that, and Maria will update you, of course. And feel free to connect. I'm adding, no more time to share it, but I'm adding my social links as well in the presentation. So, and of course you will find me on the Platform Engineering Slack group. So that's a very good place to share and connect.
Exactly. And I just shared the link once again. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them to Ali directly on the Platform Engineering Slack channel. But other than that, everyone is excited about part 2. Thank you so much for staying up so long. I know that some people are in Europe or around the world, and it's quite late. But hope everyone learned a lot today. It feels like they did, I did, and have a great day or evening.
Yeah. Thank you, and hopefully it's not overwhelming.
No, it was very hands-on. Like I was even like looking at the screen and expecting some unicorns pop up, and they did. Cool.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ali. Bye.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks. Have a good one.